What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of This Week in Sports. It is I, Romeo Sharp. This is episode 10 we're filming today. And, before I get started, I just want to give you guys a quick shout out. Thank you for helping me reach 100 followers on my Instagram page of This Week in Sports Pod. Continue to keep showing support. Continue to keep showing love to all my platforms. TikTok as well, that has over 100 followers. Also my YouTube and also my Spotify. So if you guys can, just keep showing continuous love and support. And I'm really excited how this has been playing out so far. I've been able to engage with a lot of you guys so far, and I'm really enjoying it, like I said. And, well, honestly, before we get started, I'm gonna close my laptop real quick, and I want to talk about something a little bit serious as well with you guys. This is gonna be a slight trigger warning for anyone as well. But if you guys have been following the sports world, it's more specifically college football and stuff like that, you probably know about what's been going on around. But before I get started with this, I just do want to send my condolences out to the 78-year-old father who passed away back in December after a tragic incident that happened with the star wide receiver Kyron Lacy out of LSU. I want to send my condolences to that family over there. I also want to, send my condolences out to Kyron Lacy and the Lacy family as well. I don't know any of these people personally, but I think just speaking on this is more so kind of speaking from experience myself, struggling with mental health issues and stuff like that. And I'm sure a lot of us out there have a lot of, mental health issues that we're struggling with ourselves, especially as a man. It's definitely a little bit harder. I feel like, there's a stigmatism around, men and mental health. Like, it doesn't get talked about enough and stuff like that. So I just want to send my condolences out to him, to, like I said, the 78-year-old man who was a father, a husband, a friend of many, a brother as well. And I also, like I said, with Kyron Lacy, if you haven't heard the news over this past weekend, Kyron Lacy took his own life. There's a lot of other buzz going around what actually happened as well, but I'm gonna keep that out because it's just not necessary. We lost someone that was, again, he was a brother of some, a friend of many. He was a son as well. So, just. And maybe, I don't want to make speculations, but, he dealing with what happened in December for reckless driving, that took the life of this 78-year-old man. I think personally, I'm sure he had a lot of guilt going into this this whole situation, and also just dealing with just like the scrutiny he faced, from the from media outlets and stuff like that, and just from people around him. Obviously, maybe it just was a lot on him and stuff like that. He had a lot of really good supporters around him. He had like all the LSU alumni around him as well. He had OBJ, Malik Neighbors, Jaden Daniels, all were really close friends of Kyron Lacy and stuff like that. And just as someone, like I said, who's dealt with mental health issues himself, and continues to try to heal himself and improve every day, just seeing what happened, hearing what's been happening and going on with him, like I said, I send my condolences out to him. And if this is anyone else, out there who is struggling with mental health issues as well, more particular are men out there and stuff like that. And just know you're not alone. There's many resources you can reach out to. I know probably it's harder than it is to reach out and ask for help, but my platform isn't big enough, for this to go out to everyone. But for the people that do support and do listen, all my men out there, just know that you have someone in me that you can reach out to. I'm not, like I said, I'm not Hollywood or anything like that. So I'm very, very small market, I guess you could say. I don't have much going on right now, but you have every right, every right to reach out to me and, talk to me if you are dealing with struggling with anything. And, I hope you could say the same to me as well. But like I said, just, my condolences to Kyron Lacy out there, and my condolences to the 78-year-old man and his family as well. Kyron Lacy, he was, projected to be a top of the round, first round draft pick before the incident occurred. And, with that happening, he was going to go see a judge actually yesterday. But, with the unforeseeable things that happened over the weekend, like I said, I just want to send my condolences out to him. And like I said, y'all, please don't hesitate to reach out to me ever. If you're ever struggling or dealing with something, like I said, I'm not no therapist, but still, like, I understand. I've been through a lot myself. So, like I said, it was a slight trigger warning, what I'm saying? Like, I just hope, besides everything that's been going on, I really hope everyone's been having a great week. And man, this is hard to kind of transition into, just talking about sports, but, I think, it's appropriate now to just kind of, move on and talk about sports. So, let's get right into our topics. Hold on, let me open up my laptop. We have a lot that we are going to be talking about today. One of our main things is we're going to recap what happened in the NCAA championship game last week in the men's sports. We're going to also talk about some miscellaneous things that happen around the NFL, college football as well. And then also we're going to end off with what's been going on in the NBA with the NBA postseason, starting tonight, the play-in more specifically, and then, talk about some major headlines going into this NBA postseason. So let's get right into it. So, Florida versus Houston. What an amazing way to cap off the NCAA tournament, to cap off this college basketball season. It was a long one for sure. You had a lot of things happening that throughout the season. But let's get into it. Florida wins their third national championship in school history with a 65-63 win over Houston. And let's just kind of go and see how they did it, y'all. In the first half, though, it's the first half to forget for Florida for sure. The Houston defense swarmed Florida key players. Walton Clayton Jr. himself actually was held to 0 points in that first half. Houston looked like the number one defense in the country with the way they played in that first half. Houston even opened up a 42-30 lead in the second half, and it just looked like Florida just didn't have enough gas in the tank. Because like I mentioned last week, Houston is probably one of the most athletic and has the most endurance as a team in this tournament. Like I said, they ran like a sub 5 minute mile. The entire roster did. So it's like they had a lot of juice in the tank for them for sure. Florida didn't even have a lead for nearly the entire game, honestly, y'all. Just watching this entire game, it just looks like Houston was dominating them defensively, holding their star players in check for sure. Clayton Jr., though, was able to rally the troops to what I believe was a momentum season play when he had an and one layup through traffic to tie the game up 48-all. And then he started to heat up, and he ended the game with 11 points. All those 11 points coming in the second half. His teammate Will Richard had a team-high 18 points. L.J. Cryer and company for Houston, they couldn't generate anything on offense late in the second half, though, y'all. I mean, he had 19 points himself, but he was the only Cougar to actually have double-digit points. Both teams, they battled it out up until the very end. Just watching this game, you could see that Florida was, I think, one of the top scoring tournament teams, and it didn't look like that. What was it, last Monday for sure? And just watching them and watching Walter Clayton Jr. struggle against this Houston team was just. It was a treat for sure to watch, seeing how disciplined Houston was in that first half. I mean, regardless of that, the entire game, they were pretty disciplined defensively. I wouldn't say offensively because they struggled in that second half. Both teams, like I said, they battled it out until the very end. It was a very ugly ending for sure for both of these teams. Houston turned the ball over 4 times in the last 2 minutes of that game. And And the crazy thing is, even though they turned the ball over in those last 2 minutes, Florida struggled. To even hit a shot in the last 3 minutes of the game. So like I said, both of these teams, it was ugly altogether. And, both teams, they shot well below 40% from the field, with both teams shooting respectfully. 25% from beyond the arc for, I believe it was for Florida, and then for Houston it was 24%. Or it might have been flip flop, but basically both teams struggled from beyond the arc. I think both made 6 threes on 25, 24 attempts from both teams. So like I said, it was a struggle for sure for both squads. So the crazy thing about Florida, they only held the lead for a whopping 64 seconds in this game. And by the way, with that 64 seconds, I believe I think they were up like 8-6 in the start of the game, and then after that they didn't even hold the lead for basically the entire rest of the game, basically. For Houston, though, they couldn't actually get a shot up in the last two possessions. The last two possessions, Florida just was swarming them, and like I said, they were turning the ball over 4 times in those last 2 minutes, so they obviously were turning the ball over. They couldn't get a shot up. Florida was congesting them in terms on defense and stuff like that, holding L.J. Cryer, holding all those guys to minimum shot attempts, to minimum actually creating shots as well. And then with this win, though, Todd Golden becomes the youngest head coach, 39 years old, to win the national championship since Jim Valvano did it in 1983 when North Carolina State. Walter Clayton Jr. was named the most outstanding player in the Final Four. Like I said, he had back-to-back games with 30-plus points against Auburn as well. And then, like I said, I mean, he showed up. He showed up when it mattered most. That's what really matters in this finals game. He had 11 points, might not look too flashy, but again, those 11 points came in that second half, and that's when he really sparked this team up, and they really had a lot of momentum just off of Walter Payton. And then, like I said, Will Richard as well. He played a huge role for them and really helped them dominate Houston late in the game. And again, so congratulations to Florida. Getting their third national championship as well. Houston, they fought it out. They weren't. I don't think a lot of people expected them to actually be there, but they were able to really just show and shine when it mattered most. And they had a lot of highlights throughout this tournament as well, as well as Florida. So the next question is, what's next for the champs, y'all? What is next for Florida? What's next for Houston? In terms of Florida, the top 3 scorers on the team, they have exhausted their eligibility, and they have no eligibility left, so they will be entering the draft. Walter Clayton Jr., that is, Will Richard, and Elijah Martin. So those 3 guys, like I said, they're top scorers. Will be entering the draft. I haven't looked into what their respective position is, where they'll be at in terms of this upcoming draft. I think most of them will be, early second round, late first round for sure, maybe. In terms of recruits, they only have 2 commits in the 2025 class. But obviously, with winning the national championship for Florida, I think this really bolstered. Oopsie, I said it again. But they will bolster their recruiting class now even more with this win. And I think Todd Golden just really cemented himself in Florida legacy for sure. And now a lot of guys in terms of the transfer portal, in terms of high school recruits as well, they'll keep an eye on Florida and see maybe they can run it back next year. So for Houston, though, before I get to Houston, and also Florida, they will have to replace a lot of assistant coaches. I think 2 of their coaches have accepted jobs. I think one of them was over at, what was it? Give me 1 second. Let me see who it was while I look that up. For Houston, though, they have a loaded freshman class coming in. And then Kelvin Smith, he will for sure, he may be in uncharted waters, though, actually, because there will be a lot of turnover with this roster. In previous years for Kelvin Sampson, his rosters, they've kind of been stayed together and stuff like that. They got a lot of players, that going into the draft as well, because they exhausted their eligibility. And like I said, a lot of players will be hitting the transfer portal. So, but Calvin Sampson, he's a good coach for sure. And he is someone that a lot of players probably would love to go play for. Let me see who Florida basketball. Let's see. Coach. If we look at this, so they got to fill 2 voids. I believe it is. It will be for Kevin Hovd and John Adretskek. I probably butchered his name for sure, but those 2 guys, they're leaving and they're going to different programs to go be the head coach for them. Let's see, for Kevin, he will be heading over to I believe he said, Kevin will be going to Columbia, and then John will be heading over to Campbell. So those are some, going to those programs and trying to really kind of bring that same formula, that same mentality to those two programs as they brought over to Florida. So I'm definitely something to look out for those two programs coming into this season, or for next season as well, for sure. But let's flip a switch real quick. Let's go into some news over into the NFL and college football as well. One of the biggest names that for this upcoming draft, Travis Hunter, the two-way player, or as he's confidently stated, he can play all snaps, he can play both sides, and that he is firm on wanting to play both corner and wide receiver when he comes into the NFL. So he went on and told CBS last week that, and this was crazy to me. This is crazy. This is something that I expected, not to hear from Travis Hunter because, just because there's a lot of scrutiny around him in terms of, a lot of analysts and a lot of, maybe executives too. They just don't believe he can play both sides in the NFL. It just won't translate well because just the level of talent that's there, and also just how rigorous an NFL season can actually be as opposed to college ball. Because with college ball, like I said, you have athletes. There can be a fine line. There's a gap between some athletes for sure. Like D1 and D2. What is it? Just an SEC as opposed to an ACC school. Like the talent definitely. There's a range right there. There's Travis Hunter, and then there's also just the rest of the competition in that sense. You get what I'm trying to say? So like I said, he went on to and said it's never playing football again. I've been doing this my whole life, and I love being on the football field. I feel like I can dominate on each side of the ball, so I really enjoy doing it. And basically he stated that he will not step onto a football field if he's not allowed to play both sides of the ball. And like I said, look, I think Travis Hunter has what it takes to play both sides of the ball. Who says he can't? What's to say he can't really actually do it? You know what I'm saying? We haven't seen a prospect like him in quite some time. So it's like, who are we as, casual fans, all these analysts and stuff like that. And I'm going to get into there's crazy things. These analysts don't know what they're talking about half the time. Unfortunately, these executives don't know what they're talking about. Hell, let's take it back to 2018 when Lamar Jackson went in as a quarterback. There's people that wanted him to switch over to, Bill Polian, I believe it was. And a lot of other executives, they wanted him to be a wide receiver. And just seeing that, it's just like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't really tell. You cannot tell, based off of what someone else says for these athletes and stuff like that. So, and he's also stated, Travis Hunter, he stated that no team has expressed any issues with his request. And then, like I said, in my mock draft, I have him being selected 3rd overall to the New York Giants. I think, like I said, he can really provide that two-way spark for the New York Giants. I mean, what is it looking like now, too? Like, he could go 2 or 3. He could go 2 or 3. I can't see him falling all the way to 5 or 6. I can't see that happening. But, 2 to the Cleveland Browns. I got him at 3 going to the New York Giants. And then what is it? I don't know. It's just kind of it's going to be interesting to see what happens. We're getting closer and closer to the draft, y'all. And, there's going to be a lot of smoke screen going out there for sure. Like, you don't even know what's going to be happening. Someone's going to say something, and then it's going to go a different route. So I'm super excited. And, like I said, I have the confidence in Travis Hunter, the same amount of confidence he has in himself. About being a two-way player. Like, that's something just super exciting for sure. And like I said, we gonna see where this leads for him. Like I said, I'm super excited to see where he gets drafted. Like I said, he's probably projected. He's top 3 projected for sure. And speaking of the two-way star out of Colorado, both him and Shedeur Sanders, their jersey numbers got retired over at the University of Colorado University. Number 2, that is, and number 12. They will be retiring those numbers. And like I said, both, there's a lot of people can understand Travis Hunter. The Shedeur one is probably a little bit iffy, but like I said, they both brought a lot of winning to this program those 2 years. Yes, they went 4-8 their first year with Colorado, but then they turned it around. And, like I said, this was a 1-win program not too long ago. You know what I'm saying, y'all? Like, Colorado, they weren't good. They were not good until Travis Hunter and Shedeur Sanders and Deion Sanders came and left their mark for that school. Obviously, Deion Sanders, like I mentioned, he signed a 5-year extension with Colorado, so he ain't going nowhere. He's going to continue to build that program up and probably hopefully bring them over the upper echelon of, top programs. Probably, be up there with the Alabamas, the LSUs, the Clemsons, and, all the Ohio States, the Michigans of the world. He wants to get that program up there. With those two guys leaving their marks on that program, I can confidently say that, he's definitely trending in the right direction. Yes, they didn't win a bowl game with these two, and they didn't even touch, 10 wins or anything like that in their 2 years. But like I said, they're removed from they were 2 years removed from a 1-win season. So Colorado fans got a lot to enjoy, and they were spoiled by the riches of Shedeur, of Travis Hunter. Them sidelines were Hollywood sidelines for, the last 2 years with Deion, bringing in like NFL legends, current NFL players that even can go to Colorado, and a lot of people and I think that's really just boosted their NIL. They can bring in really good players for sure for the next 5 years with Deion being there. So like I said, this is very exciting for this team. And then, speaking of this Shedeur stuff, Saints quarterback Derek Carr, he's dealing with a lingering shoulder issue that could potentially sideline him for the 2025 upcoming season. Now, with this shoulder injury, he's still weighing out his possibilities. He might have to get surgery, and who knows how long the length of his recovery will be. Like I said, it could sideline him for the entire season. But with that being said, though, now the Shedeur to the Saints rumor have been boiling up at this point. So, again, who knows where these other, with the top 5 teams, what is it? There are the Tennessee Titans, and I really believe they will go with Cam Ward. But like I said, this Cam Ward stuff going on, this could really be smokescreen as well, and they could really pull the plug and actually get Shedeur Sanders for the Tennessee Titans. Now, would that be smart? Who's to tell? You know what I'm saying? Shedeur was a top 3 prospect, and now as we get closer and closer to the draft, I think Peter Schrager, he went on and stated on on an interview on ESPN, or I think it was on First Take. It was on First Take with Stephen A. Smith. He was stating how Shedeur will probably fall to 9. Because I think they were talking about Mel Kiper's mock draft, and Mel Kiper has him at 9 going to the Saints. I also have him at 9 going to the Saints as well, and a lot of other draft analysts got him going there as well. So, and I think Stephen A. was kind of, he was taken aback, because it's like, wait, how did we go from Shedeur being a top 3 prospect to now not even being top 6, now falling to 9, or even falling out of the top 10, and the Steelers having to, come up. And this is like kind of, it's not verbatim, but this is what Stephen A. was saying, like the Steelers having to trade all the way to go try to get him. But, with Shedeur, I feel like he's definitely wanted by an NFL team. And like I said, with the Tennessee Titans, you got the Tennessee Titans, you got the Cleveland Browns, you got the New York Giants. Those are 3 teams that could possibly go in on Shedeur. And then once you get from there, we have the New England Patriots are 4, Jacksonville's 5. Those 2 teams don't need a quarterback. You have, who's at 6? You got the Raiders at 6. Raiders could potentially, that's not out of the question there for the Raiders. You have the Jets at 7. They just got Justin Fields. You have the Carolina Panthers at 8. They have Bryce Young, and they feel confident in Bryce Young. And then you have the New Orleans Saints at 9 with the Derek Carr issue going on and stuff like that. The next quarterback up, I think, is Jake Heiner out of Fresno State, who's coming into his second season with the New Orleans Saints. And I think they also got Spencer Rattler. But I don't think they're high on both of those quarterbacks. So again, that makes sense, And then after that, like, there's not much quarterback needy teams to shave out from like 10 to 20 is damn near no quarterback needy team, unfortunately. So it's like it is top 10 for Shedeur for sure. And again, I truly believe that he will go number 9 to the New Orleans Saints. And there's no knock on him. That's no knock on him. It's just like I said, I mean, unless the Saints should move up, and and if they fear that someone else will try to jump them and get Shedeur Sanders, and yes, they should make the appropriate moves to go and get Shedeur. But we're gonna keep a close eye on this Derek Carr situation. Like I said, it's boiling for sure. And then something else that's been coming out this week, y'all, and I'm like, I feel like it's been going on since 2018, since Lamar Jackson. And this is about Lamar Jackson, y'all. So Lamar Jackson, like I said, he was the 32nd overall pick in the 2018 draft by the Baltimore Ravens. A lot of teams passed up on him. I mean, my own Denver Broncos passed up on him, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of quarterback-needy teams around that time, the top 3 teams that year, I think they all selected quarterbacks. And, I think, what was it, Baker Mayfield? He's panning out well. I mean, he didn't end up in Cleveland, unfortunately. He's over in Tampa Bay now. And then, you got Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold went to the New York Jets. But let's get into this real quick, y'all. There's a lot of regret flowing in. Close to two franchises that spoke about Lamar Jackson. You got executives, and stuff like that. You have coaches. You have a comedian that talks about it. Well, let's get into it though. Legendary coach Bill Belichick. He admits that not drafting Lamar Jackson was a huge mistake for them. Such a huge mistake. And you know who they ended up drafting, y'all? They ended up drafting Sony Michel with that 31st pick in 2018. And Sony Michel didn't really pan out for the New England Patriots. So who knows? Maybe Bill Belichick would have still had his job in New England if they would have drafted Lamar Jackson back in 2018. Like I said, he would have had his job probably. And like I said, they ended up with Sony Michel in 2018. So, like I said, it's ridiculous ridiculous thing going on there in New England. I think I think all 32 teams, looking back in 2018, can possibly, have some type of regret. And like I mentioned earlier in the show, like that, there's teams wanting him to go over to wide receiver, and it's like, and it really shows that a lot of analysts and a lot of executives don't really know what they're doing, half the time, and I'm not here to, I'm not an expert myself, but, it's just like seeing, how Lamar Jackson's panned out for the Baltimore Ravens. Like it speaks volume to, a lot of mistakes that a lot of these teams has made, passing up on him in 2018. Again, my Denver Broncos passed up on him, and it hurts. I ain't gonna lie. It hurts now that I think about it, and then another guy, comedian Larry David. I'm not too familiar with him. Maybe some of you guys are. He went on the air and he stated, and I quote, "I did call Mike McGagnon before the 2018 draft, and I recommended that he draft Lamar Jackson." He said, "I have a witness." And then, and what he said afterwards, and he was asked, like, what did Mike say? And he said that Mike gave him a condescending laugh, and like I said, the whole room just kind of laughed about it. Excuse me. Oh, sorry. They laughed about it. They went on and they drafted Sam Darnold that year in 2018, and then he was subsequently fired the next year. So it's like, what I'm saying, just a lot of during this week, a lot, I guess, regret, because I know as we come closer to the NFL draft, obviously a lot of teams will come out, a lot of folks will come out and kind of like just say, hey, wow, we should have gotten so and so at this spot, and we very much regret not doing so. But just, like I said, with Lamar Jackson, now he's one of the highest paid quarterbacks out there. He's a great dual threat guy, and I'm just excited to see where Baltimore goes from here. And like, he's making a lot of teams, eat their words, and making a lot of teams regret trying to make him change the wide receiver and just not even picking him up in that 2018 draft. So, and another thing around the league, in terms of college football, though, and this is like the big question, y'all. Now, I want you guys to let me know, and I'm gonna get into it myself. But do you think has NIL officially ruined college football? What do you guys think? So, and the reason why I'm saying this is because now we had our first ever holdout related to NIL deals. Nico Iyamila Ava. I butchered his name. I'm gonna lie. I've been trying to practice it all day too, y'all, and I just can't get it right. But Nico, he told the University of Tennessee he is holding out of spring practice as he seeks a new $4 million deal. And like I said, damn, that is ridiculous. $4 million deal. In terms of him, like I said, Tennessee, days later, they announced that they are moving on from him, and that Nico will be hitting the transfer portal when it opens up tomorrow, which is what? Today's April 15th. April 16th is when the transfer portal opens up, so then he'll be hitting that, and hopefully, a school pick him up or anything like that. Like I said, I'm all for college athletes to get paid, y'all. I think they should get paid because, like I said, they put in the same amount of time as, not in a disrespectful way, but they definitely, not to compare them to the NFL by any stretch or means, but they definitely put in the same amount of blood, sweat, and tears as in the NFL. And, and they're dealing with another thing. Well, they're student athletes. So student first, athlete later. So they have to deal with also just being in school and dealing with exams, dealing with homework, going to class every day too as well. So, they deserve to be paid. And a lot of these schools have a lot of fans as well. And just like I said, so they deserve to definitely get paid. But this one is like a little questionable in terms of for Nico. And then with Nico on the move, honestly, y'all, Arch Manning is the only signal caller in the top 5 of the 2023 recruiting class to remain at his original school. Like I said, the top 5 were Arch Manning. He's still at Texas himself. He sat behind for 2 years, and he's redshirted his first, so he sat behind. He's being patient, and that's not in college football anymore. There's not a lot of patience now with these players. Nico, like I said, he's at Tennessee, but who knows where he'll be going from here on out. The next guy was Dante Moore. He transferred from UCLA to Oregon. I think he's going to be the signal caller over there in Oregon. So, after Dylan Gabriel has entered the draft himself. So, kind of excited to see where Dante Moore goes from here. Jackson Arnold, transferred from Oklahoma. I think because he got benched last season. I think it was he didn't play too well for Oklahoma, but he got benched, and I think just he was impatient himself. So he transferred over to Auburn. And I'm not here to rain on any parades. I'm not here to down anybody, but Malachi Nelson just hasn't panned out to what he wanted to be. He went to USC, transferred to Boise State. Now he's transferred over to University of Texas, El Paso, UTEP, y'all. So it's not too sure what's been happening with him. I'm hoping he can, revitalize himself over at UTEP and maybe, bring a spark over there for that program, which hasn't been one of the better programs in recent histories. But we'll see where he pans out. In terms of Nico, though, y'all, his transfer stock is plummeting because he has multiple teams, multiple programs aren't interested in him, but they're only interested if he lowers his asking price down to maybe $1 million. Now, again, everyone knows, I think he knows his worth. You know what I'm saying? I'm not here to, take away his bag from here or anything like that. But at the same time, if you want to play Nico, you gotta, if you have a real love for the game, you'll compensate. You'll come to a compromise with some of these programs. And like I say, he contacted Oregon over the weekend, but to move to Eugene and possibly play over there in Oregon, but they didn't express no interest. I think a lot of people were thinking, University of North Carolina as well with Bill Belichick over there now. Maybe he can go over there, and they got their 5-star signal caller over there, but they're not so interested too just because of his asking price. So. And then also Tulane. Tulane as well was probably a big spot for him as well. Again, his asking price just has been way too high. And so it looks like whenever stuff like that happens, usually players will, lower their asking price, and he'll find somewhere to go for sure. Like I said, in his last year with Tennessee, he threw for 2,616 yards. He had 19 touchdowns, 5 interceptions on 63.8% completion percentage in his first full season as a starting quarterback at Tennessee. So, you're going to get yourself a good playmaker out of him. He's also kind of a dual threat guy. He had 358 rushing yards and 3 touchdowns in 2024 for Tennessee. So, we'll see. We're going to keep a close eye on Nico and see where he goes, where he lands from here. And then, speaking of NIL, Raiders superstar defensive end Max Crosby has been named the assistant GM of his alma mater at Eastern Michigan. He's the first active NFL player to hold this position. And we've been seeing this lately a lot with a lot of, superstars, in the NFL and the NBA. I believe even in the NBA for college hoops, we have players like Trae Young, who's also now assistant GM, I think, over at Oklahoma it is. Let me double check. So for Trae Young, it's Oklahoma, and then also for Steph Curry, it's for Davidson. He's assistant GM. So those are 2 active players that they've done the same thing that Max Crosby has been doing over in the NFL as well. So, and then with that, he will help evaluate high school and transfer portal prospects, as well as manage the NIL budget and student athlete support. So just, I think I really like that about these, because like I said, it'll bring in talent. Like, what I'm saying? With someone like Max Crosby, who went to Eastern Michigan, you like Steph Curry, Trae Young, all these like superstar athletes who are trademark names for the respective franchises and for their respective sport as well. It's just like seeing that happen. And it's probably going to be a continuous trend, y'all. We're going to see a lot of players, go into these roles for these programs just to help out and bring in more prospects. Kind of the same as like, hiring people like Deion Sanders and, like hiring big people for, big household names to for these programs. And I'm really excited to see where they go from here. Another couple news going on around the NFL. Joe Flacco, he signs a 1-year deal with the Browns as he returns for his second stint. Let's kind of look at that Browns, look at that roster for the Browns in terms of quarterbacks. So they got Joe Flacco, they got Kenny Pickett, they also got an injured Deshaun Watson. And since 1999, the Browns have had 40, set to be 41, different starting quarterbacks, like I said, since the 99 season. So it's like, the quarterback carousel is continuously going for the Cleveland Browns, and so we just gotta see where they go from there. Like I said, they do have that number 2 pick. They can go in so many directions. I have them getting Abdul Carter, but they could go Shador. They could go Travis Hunter. I don't know. They could just go. The possibilities are endless for the Cleveland Browns at that 2 spot. They're really comfortable there at that 2 spot. So we're gonna really see what they want to do come the NFL draft. So with Joe Flacco getting picked up, they got another. I guess you could say he's pretty reliable. I guess he's definitely out of his prime for sure. He's definitely getting up there. He's up there in age for sure. So, but seeing Joe Flacco sign with the Browns, returning for his second stint, he won when he played for the Browns that first stint. He won Comeback Player of the Year, and he led them to the playoffs. So it's like they got someone in Joe Flacco. You know what I'm saying? So, but with Joe Flacco and Kenny Pickett, I don't know if that's really what they want to go with, but we'll see what Cleveland does. I want to give a huge shout out as well to Patrick Peterson. Patrick Peterson, the 3-time first-team All-Pro, 8-time Pro Bowler, is retiring with the Arizona Cardinals. The 34-year-old cornerback, which is crazy. I didn't even know he was 34. It felt like he'd been playing in the league for over 20-plus years, y'all. He's been playing for 13 seasons, though, but he had 652 total tackles, 4 sacks, 2 forced fumbles. He had 36 interceptions, along with 2 pick sixes. He was the 5th overall pick out of LSU in the 2011 NFL draft. He played 10 years with Arizona and had some stints with the Vikings and Steelers where he didn't look the best. And like I said, maybe his age caught up to him and he just didn't play the way he played with Arizona. Like I said, I think he's a Hall of Famer for sure. I looked up to him, honestly, along with other cornerbacks. When I was playing, I looked up to people like Patrick Peterson. I looked up to Champ Bailey of the world. I looked up to just like those type of guys, Richard Sherman, because I play corner myself, as I mentioned before, and so I mimic my game after guys like Patrick Peterson, because he was a great corner, like I said, and I think he will be a first ballot Hall of Famer, I believe. Like I said, he brought a lot of success over to Arizona in his stint there. And like I said, but congratulations on the amazing career for Patrick Peterson. And then while we are on the subject of cornerbacks, All-Pro Jalen Ramsey and Miami Dolphins have mutually agreed to explore trade options for the 30-year-old cornerback. We have no timetable of when they want to trade him, but looking at it from a distance, it seems like they want to try to get something done before the NFL draft. We don't have a list of teams so far who's interested in Jalen Ramsey. Like I said, he's an All-Pro corner, and he's still probably got some left in the tank for sure. And we're just gonna see from there where he goes. Okay, y'all. And then with all that being said, y'all, let's wrap this whole episode up, and let's talk about the NBA postseason that officially will begin tonight, actually, with the play-in game. I believe it's a 7 and 8 seed playing as well. Like I said, the NBA regular season officially ended, and the postseason is going to start tonight. The Wild Wild West, y'all. Like I said, it came down to the last regular season game. Some of the most notable things we're going to look at. We're going to look at that 7 and 8 play-in game. More specifically, the Warriors, y'all. So the Warriors, they were on the brink of securing that 6th seed to play the LA Lakers. But there was a blown a game-winning shot from Buddy Hield against the Clippers, and he ruined those chances. Like I think he was cold for like his 20 minutes that he played in that game anyways, regardless. So kind of questionable to see why they gave Buddy Hield the last shot of the game, but they have the 7th seed, and they will be playing they'll be playing Memphis. I believe it is tonight, y'all. I'll look into that right now. But another big surprise to me as well was the Phoenix Suns not making the playoffs. Let alone not even making the play-in. So, like, they fired Mike Budenholzer, so they're going to be on their third straight coach being fired. They're going to be finding a new head coach. And it looks like, Kevin Durant and Bradley Beal most likely will be on the move this summer. They probably will move on from those two guys. I think Bradley Beal has a no-trade clause, so if he waives it, they probably might have to blow out that whole team. And it just really does suck seeing that, they have Devin Booker, you got Kevin Durant, you got Bradley Beal, and they still couldn't even make the play-in. So it was a disaster. It was a failure of a project for the Phoenix Suns. Years removed from making the NBA Finals. Like I think every year they just been trajecting downwards, unfortunately. So they went from making the finals to getting swept in the first round, to losing in the first round again, to now just not even making the playoffs. So we're gonna keep a close eye on Phoenix. But let's have a look at the games, y'all. Let's have a look at these games. So the 1 through 6 for the West, let's look at it. We have OKC at the number 1 seed. We have the Houston Rockets. Now the Houston Rockets, y'all, seeing them going from I think they went 2 years in a row as the worst team in the West, to seeing their progress, to seeing how they've turned this franchise around with all that talent they have over there in Houston, that young talent. Seeing them flip everything around is definitely, they got the 2 seed. The Lakers got the 3 seed. I think that's the highest seed they've been since, I believe, 2020-ish, and I could be wrong. So the Lakers got the 3rd seed. With the 4th seed, you have the Denver Nuggets. The Clippers get the 5th, and then the Minnesota Timberwolves, they have that 6th seed. And then let's move over to the East. The Cleveland Cavaliers, I think they have the best record in the NBA. They're the number 1 seed. The Boston Celtics, the reigning champs, got that 2 seed. The Knicks will have the 3 seed. The Pacers got 4. The Bucks got 5. And then Detroit basketball is back. They got that 6 seed, y'all. And then let's kind of look at these play-in games real quick, y'all. Let's see. So we have for the 7th and 8th for the winner being the 7th seed, we have Golden State versus the Memphis Grizzlies. Now, man, this game is going to come down to the wire, I believe. I really like the Grizzlies here. I believe, Golden State struggled in playing games. I think they're 0-3 in their playing games since the play-in started back in 2020. So they haven't played tremendously well in the play-in. But so I think Memphis wins against the Golden State Warriors. And then when we look at that Sac and Mavs game, the Mavs could probably surprise us, but I don't really trust them just because they are, I just don't really trust this team. So I think Sac goes on to win, and then from the winner of that team, like I said, I believe it'll be Warriors versus the Kings. Now, last time these teams played, the Kings did beat the Warriors, but this is a different Warriors team. Jimmy Butler being there, so I believe the Warriors will round out that 8th seed and play the OKC Thunder as well as the Rockets playing the Memphis Grizzlies as that 7th seed. So that's going to be very exciting. If we look over to the East real quick for the playing games, man, y'all, we have the Magic, which I really like the Magic here. They play the Atlanta Hawks, who are probably the most consistent team ever. They're probably, there's a thing going around that they're the most mid team that you could possibly, see. Trae Young possibly can't see them getting them past Orlando for sure, unfortunately. So I got Orlando winning to be that 7th seed to play the Boston Celtics. And then if we look over what is it? The Bulls versus the Miami Heat. I mean, the Bulls looked pretty good this season. The Miami Heat, they're heating up a little bit themselves. But I think the Bulls can pull this one out, and they'll play the Hawks, and then I think the Hawks might beat the Bulls and get that 8th seed to play the Cleveland Cavaliers. So my favorite, before we end this off, y'all, as well, I just want to look at one of my favorite matchups, and I think it is the Detroit Pistons versus the New York Knicks. Detroit was 3-1 against the Knicks in the regular season, so the Detroit Pistons have what it takes. And then also, I was watching a montage. Now they might have been cherry picking, but I was watching a montage of different highlights from Karl Anthony Towns for New York, and it literally seems like he's a liability on defense because he looks like a statue. He's very slow, so I don't know if the New York Knicks have what it takes to beat the Detroit Pistons. So I really hope the Detroit Pistons, if they play as well in Cade Cunningham, I think he might be. I think I got him being the most improved player this year. If they can, squeeze out. Maybe I can say it in a 7-game series for sure. I think they're going to go back and forth. And I think, Detroit because they have, for their home games, they're actually going to be, they're not allowing teams outside of like the Midwest region to buy tickets, so for their fans. So it's going to be interesting to see how that is. And also that Lakers and T-Wolves game is going to be freaking out of this world for sure. Watching LeBron and Luka versus Ant-Man, you know what I'm saying? Like, I love watching Ant-Man in the playoffs. He's something different in the playoffs for sure. So, I'm looking forward to, like I said, all these playoff games. The playoffs are actually set to start April 19th, but the play-in starts today, and like I said, I'm just very super excited for these teams that are playing tonight, y'all. So you guys let me know who you believe, who's your champion at the end of the playoffs for the NBA. Let me know down below what you guys think. And with that all being said, y'all, this wraps up the 10th episode of This Week in Sports with, your host, Romeo Sharp. Like I said, I appreciate you guys for tuning in and listening to this episode. Let me know what you guys think down below about all the different topics we talk about today. And like I mentioned in the beginning, if you have to reach out and all that good stuff, y'all. So, like I said, have a good rest of your week, y'all, and let's get ready for this NBA playoffs.